Hello everyone. So powdery mildew is attacking everything in my garden. Okay, not everything, but it feels like a lot. It's definitely on all of the zinnias in my garden. It got to one dahlia. It might have killed an aster. I'm not sure yet, but I'm going to be treating the powdery mildew today. So in the last 2 years, I actually haven't had that much of an issue with powdery mildew. And I think I said that out loud too many times. So of course, Mother Nature had to make sure that it's happening in the garden now. So this is probably, I'd say, one of the most widespread issues of powdery mildew that I've had, at least in the last few years. So I think the weather, it loves heat, humidity. That's basically like summertime in Chicago. So I think this has just been like a really great year for powdery mildew to thrive. So I'll talk a little bit about what it is, how I'm going to treat it. I'll take you around and give you, I guess, a powdery mildew tour, and then we will go ahead and apply a spray that I've made. So first of all, what is powdery mildew? If you have zinnias and you live somewhere where there is a lot of humidity, you've probably dealt with this before. I knew a little bit about it, and then I also, from reading up on it, realized I have some misconceptions about what it is and how it spreads. So first of all, powdery mildew is caused by a fungus, and that fungus can spread usually by wind, even from like miles and miles away. So that's probably, I'm assuming, how it gets up into my garden. Where you'll notice it often is on the leaves, where either it might be like circles of white powder, or in my case it just kind of covers the entirety of the leaf. Now I assumed it could spread kind of everywhere, but from what I've been reading, there are certain strains of powdery mildew that will only impact certain families of plants. So I think that's why, for example, with the powdery mildew, it's all over the zinnias. It was on a dahlia, but it hasn't really, at least, appeared on a lot of my other plants. Again, it might have killed an aster, but I actually didn't see any powdery mildew signs of it on the aster. But also, this fungus can overwinter, so I want to make sure I get all of the leaves cleared out of the soil. I've been trying to keep up on that, but sometimes the leaves will fall off and I won't notice. So any of the leaves that I remove or that fall off into the soil, I take out and I throw them away. I was reading some stuff that said you could compost it and it'd be fine, but I'd rather play it safe than sorry and just get this out of the garden. Now I would say probably my biggest misconception, and let me know if this for some reason isn't true, but from what I've been reading at like extension websites, I thought moist leaves or water on the leaves helped cause powdery mildew. When actually, if the leaves are consistently wet from either rain or irrigation, it actually inhibits the spread. So the powdery mildew prefers humid environments, but dry leaf conditions. And I do have all of my zinnias, most of my garden, set up on a drip. So unless it rains, which we have been getting a lot of rain, the leaves actually don't get that wet. And I assumed that was actually good to stop powdery mildew. But apparently it's not. So it wants humidity, but it doesn't want actual water on the leaves, which is why spraying the leaves with either a fungicide or the mixture I'm going to use today won't increase the spread of the powdery mildew. So that was the number one thing that was surprising to me, because I just assumed the wetness of the leaves was spreading the powdery mildew. Now, having powdery mildew on the plants typically doesn't automatically mean the plant is going to die. If left untreated though, it can, and it can also reduce the productivity of the plant. So either like smaller flowers or smaller fruit. Powdery mildew in the past I've also gotten on like cucumbers and melons and pumpkins. I don't have it anywhere on those yet. Fingers crossed. I only have one pumpkin plant, but no signs of powdery mildew yet. But that has definitely taken off a lot of leaves on my vines in the past. So the first option, obviously, before you plant is you can try to find powdery mildew resistant varieties. I don't know if the Johnny Seed zinnias I got, the giant Banary ones, are resistant. I feel like I might have said that. I'll look it up and kind of note it down below if it said they were or were not. But obviously, even if they were, I have powdery mildew. Another thing you want to make sure to do is put them in full sun, because that will reduce humidity. That's not a problem with all of my zinnias. They are all in full sun. Where I've kind of run into the issues is plant spacing, because I tend to plant things closer together in my garden to get as much in here as I can in my small space. And definitely planting things closer together reduces airflow. So I think that has definitely impacted whether or not I get powdery mildew on my zinnias. The other thing that you can do is prune. That again is just opening up more airflow, and I think that's where I didn't go hard enough, fast enough. I'm very bad at pruning because, especially when there's like a bud on a stem, I'm like, oh, I don't want to cut off this flower. It's not here yet. I want to make sure that I get as many flowers as possible. But if I want to be able to stop the spread of disease, I definitely want to prune out my plants. And I think that's where in one section of my bed, I just didn't do it fast enough or hard enough to open up the space. I've done the pruning now. I think I did that yesterday on the section that I'm going to show you. You can also remove the most infected leaves. You don't want to remove all of the leaves because the plants need leaves in order to photosynthesize. So that's a bad sign if it's on every single leaf. That coating on the leaves also makes it harder for the leaf itself to photosynthesize. If I don't remove the leaves, they basically just dry up and fall off into the soil. So I've been trying to remove the leaves that have the worst of it, spray the leaves that are still like just a minor infection so that the plant still does have some leaves on it. So I have been better at that than like actually taking off entire branches and pruning. But I do need to be more careful about making sure that none of those dead leaves have fallen off into the soil, or if they do, I'm regularly cleaning them up. So definitely prune to get more airflow in between your plants. So the mixture that I'm using today, I did have a fungicide that I think was from Bonide, maybe, that was specifically for powdery mildew. I ran out of that. I was applying that on a weekly basis once I first started to see some of the signs. And I think that did work on some plants. Then I ran out and it rained so much that I didn't keep up on the weekly spray. And I think that definitely caused the powdery mildew to spread because I stopped kind of doing that regular weekly application. Once a week is all that's recommended in terms of frequency, even though I have the urge to apply it every day. So what I'm going to do today is I mixed up a mixture of baking soda, I used neem oil, and water. Now from what I was reading, milk also works, I just don't have any on hand, and the baking soda or the milk will increase the alkalinity, I think it is, of the leaves, and then make it less likely for the powdery mildew spores to spread around. But that is not information that was just sitting in my brain. That's just what I've been reading up on. So that's why I'm going to go ahead and spray this both on the top, bottom of the leaves, probably just spray as much of the plants as I can, and then only do this once a week. I think the ratio, so this bottle is 1/4 gallon. I think the ratio was a tablespoon of baking soda. Was it a teaspoon, then of horticultural oil? I used neem oil. And then a gallon of water. So I basically just divided all of that by 4, and that is what is in this spray bottle. Now we're going to go around and I'll show you what I've done so far. I'll show you how things look, and then we'll get to treating them. One thing too that you might want to be aware of, I do have more sensitive skin in general, but after I was done yesterday pruning and pulling off some of the leaves, cutting off some of the stems, I didn't notice anything right away, but this morning I did have some bumps all along my arm, which you can't really see right now, but they're very tiny. They were very itchy. So I think I might be slightly allergic to powdery mildew. I think that was the only thing I really touched yesterday. I had gloves on my hands, nothing on my arms. So I'm going to put just a shirt over with long sleeves and my gloves on before I touch any parts of these plants. So let's go ahead and I will give you a powdery mildew tour of my garden. This bed right here is where I've had the worst case of the powdery mildew. So in this bed I have 3 or 4 of the giant binary zinnias. They are all planted in the back, but you can see they've kind of curved around in this bed. And I think you can tell how many of the leaves I have removed. Now this powdery mildew has impacted the older leaves first. The newer ones, you know, don't look too bad. There are still flowers, so that is good. But you can see there's a lot missing off of the plants. And there are some leaves down there that I'm going to clean up. So I'm essentially going to spray every part of this plant. I'll probably just spray the surrounding plants just in case. But this right here is where one of these asters died. So I had 4 of the bonita shell pink asters. When I came out yesterday, it looked like it almost hadn't had water in a few days, except, I mean, it had. Everything else in this bed is fine in terms of watering. It's set up on drip to run in the morning, and it just was completely dead. So I don't know what the issue was. Again, I'm thinking maybe powdery mildew had something to do with it. There isn't really a ton of signs of it on the leaves. I mean, there's a little bit right here, but nothing compared to what the zinnias look like. So I don't know if that was the cause. I also had one die in the other bed that looked the exact same in the same spot. Very strange. Let me know if you have any other ideas. Also, if you're wondering what these pots are, that's how I support my plants once they get too big and start to curve and fall over, because I didn't support them enough in the first place. But I went ahead and popped this Gomphorina in the spot where the aster was. I'm going to see how it does, if it stays alive or not. If it also dies, I probably won't replace anything in there. And then, I don't know, again, I'm trying to keep the soil clean since it can overwinter. I don't know if I'm going to like swap out some of the soil in this bed. I'm going to save that for later to figure out. But this is where it's been the worst. Then I have these two pots with my Queen Lime Blush and Queen Lime Red zinnias. I didn't have to remove quite as much here. There are some dying leaves that I'm going to take off and throw away. You can see the powdery mildew there, but these aren't bad enough where I would remove these. I'm just going to spray these. Some of these down here, which are more coated, those I am going to remove from the plant. I think I might also cut some branches. I already did prune these a little bit, but I'm going to cut some more branches that are growing towards the center of the plant. But you can see it's just so hard to sacrifice the blooms, but I know I need to for the health of the plant. I have more zinnias tucked back here. This one I didn't have room for, so threw it in this box with my Morning Glory, but you can see powdery mildew on that. Again, not as terrible as the other one, so probably just going to spray that. Same thing here with this zinnia, powdery mildew. Maybe I'll do a little pruning, probably just going to mostly spray. And coming back to this bed, Super Tuny is looking great. I have the Bonita Shell Pink asters here too, and it was in the same corner where one died. So I pulled it, but this bed still looks full enough that I didn't replace it. It didn't have that same kind of gap as the other bed did. Now these, I feel like, I don't know if I just noticed it sooner than in the first bed I showed you. These don't look as bad as that other bed. These are probably the second worst part of the garden. I pruned these quicker. I removed the leaves quicker. There are still a little bit of leaves down there that I want to get off of the soil, but these weren't as badly impacted. Now there's not many flowers because I just harvested a lot of them yesterday, but they are still budding. So this one I think is a little bit better, but we are still going to treat and remove some of the leaves here as well. So I'm going to start with the worst first. These I already pruned a lot of yesterday, so I think I'm just going to spray these down and remove any of the dead brown leaves that are still on the stalks or anything that's sitting on the soil. I've gone ahead and treated all the zinnias now. I didn't show you everything just because it got really repetitive after spraying, removing leaves, and pruning. But this is everything that I pruned off. And you can see why it's so hard to do, because those all could have been flowers. There are actually some flowers, I think 4 zinnias it looks like, that I did harvest, so I'll put those inside in a vase. But I mean, it does seem like everything has a little bit more airflow. So that one I didn't prune much, just sprayed. These two I pruned and also shifted the pots more forward because there was definitely more powdery mildew on the back than there was on the front. And I think it's because they were so close to that raised bed. So those are good. Back here, I moved this pot over as well, pruned a little bit, sprayed. Same thing with the zinnia behind it. And then around the back here, I think I removed maybe 1 or 2 branches, and then gave everything a good spray. So that's everything I'm gonna do for today. It's not like I have a great before and after to show you since I didn't cure the powdery mildew, but I'm gonna keep up on the spray once a week, continue to look for anything I can prune or remove the leaves off of the soil, and then just hope for the best for the rest of the season. So let me know if you're having powdery mildew issues. Let me know if there's anything else that you do, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.